All right, welcome back to another exciting episode of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah.
And I'm Chad.
And we have two exciting guests on today. We have Ryan and Evan, creators of After the Empire. And I'm super excited to have them on today, specifically because they're local to us and they made an awesome game. And I did the count, over 235 miniatures. If you do it right, that's pretty impressive. We love our miniatures, but we talk a lot about other kinds of games, board games, RPGs, that sort of thing. Why don't you say hi to everyone?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Ryan.
Nice. And I want to get started just by hearing a little bit about your story. I want to just both of you have a deep background in the hobby. And so I want to just hear a little bit from how you where you came from and to get to this point, and then we'll kind of flesh out some more later. So either one of you can go first.
Evan's older, so he has a longer story. So why don't you start?
Okay, I see how it is. I am the elder betwixt the two of us. So I grew up, playing D&D. I was born in '79, so I didn't quite catch the beginning of it. But I grew up playing D&D in my early young teens. Some other random stuff, even when I was a little bit younger. Top Secret was a game, and there was Middle Earth role playing, and there was GURPS, and there was BattleTech and Mech Warrior, and I forget which one was the minis and which one was the role playing system, but I played both. And you have your big old huge map, and it takes you 6 hours to fire a laser.
I love that.
It's classic.
That was me in my teenage years. My greatest gaming love was, and probably still is, D&D, although not so much in practice because pandemic happens.
Yeah.
And you don't get to play D&D very much. My close second is board games, which I never really got that into until I had a board game store in Portland called Red Castle Games, which still is around. You should go in. And it's you stock board games. I got into Magic when I was in my teens as well. Magic the Gathering. Played a whole bunch of that, obviously. That's one of the things that Ryan and I bonded over when we were in our 20s and waiters at some restaurants together, and we would hang out.
Is that how you met, was working together?
It was working together, and then we would just hang out and play tons of Magic.
Oh, you're nerdy? I'm nerdy too. We should hang out.
Right? We should hang out.
That's how I met Hans.
Then Magic, and then I started the game store with Matthew, which also was bonding over playing nerdy games together. Magic and Dr. Mario were the two for us. And we... Anyway, all the songs are still in my head. All right. So you start the board game store. I was there for about 6 years. I started getting into, the resurgence, the American resurgence of board games that came a little delayed from Germany and other places in Europe. I started with Carcassonne and those kinds of things. And then Lords of Waterdeep came out, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And I played Pillars of the Earth, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I like Euro games. This is great. And then Ryan said, let's make a board game together.
Nice.
Well, you're skipping over. You made a board game before that.
I did make a board game before that.
Come on.
Oh, dark secret.
I've actually returned to it and play tested it a few times recently, and it's still pretty good, I think. And so I still might do something with it. But I did. I kickstarted a game in the Wild West of Kickstarters. I don't know, within the first year or two that it existed.
Nice.
And it was called Big Fish River at that time. You can still go on and find the video, and it is perhaps the longest, weirdest Kickstarter video ever made. So look for it. You might enjoy it. Big Fish River. Anyway, we've made some tweaks, and I might come back to it. But I set the goal too high. I thought, I have a board game store. We've got fans.
Yeah.
That should be enough, right? It's not enough.
No.
Yeah.
The funny thing
Turns out
is,
the
if I had
fans aren't
set,
quite that loyal.
well,
Maybe.
no, it's like lots of people from our board game store did back it, but you need more than
In Evan's defense, he actually had a successful Kickstarter campaign. He just set the bar too high, so it didn't hit
Yes.
the market needed to fund. And that was because it was a small, lightweight family game.
Yeah.
And so he needed way more individual purchases than he got. But he actually got a whole bunch of people to back it. It just wasn't
we
enough
got
because their individual backings were single copies at like $10, $15. And that didn't add up to a total that was as high as he had set.
Yeah,
So,
I put the minimum at 15K, and we got like 7,800 or something like that, which
you
was
could have made it
totally,
for.
Yeah.
totally enough.
Yeah,
to
that's
print,
still
you know.
tons of copies.
Yeah, more than enough. So I just didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
basically. But I did produce a cool video.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to go look for that. I'm going to try to find the link.
It's quite an interesting experience to watch. It gets pretty long in the tooth in the second half, but
Yeah. The game shows up about 5 minutes in.
Just lots of B-roll.
It was a piece
and
of
you
art.
fishing.
Yeah.
It was a piece of art.
it was a piece of art. You need to
I
see
mean,
lots
true
of-
story. I love all those old Kickstarter projects that came out. You know, you get some person just sitting at his kitchen table and just like, this is the thing that I created. You know, support me. You know, and now it's a lot of videos now are really well produced. It seems
Yeah.
like.
Kind of miss
Art-
the old days. I appreciate the products that are coming out of the new days, but I miss the like openness of the old days where you could just have a cool idea and have people believe in you. But
Yeah.
I love that.
we went a little overwrought on the video, let's say.
Okay. All right. So designing a game and actually creating a game, something you've done before, and is that something you enjoy?
Well, actually, that first game, the original design was by Chris Kelly. He's a buddy of mine. He was a customer at the store. He's really got a good brain for coming up with like family weight and kids weight games. And then basically I took on more of a development role
Okay.
for that first game, rather than, I mean, I guess design and development are very interrelated, but I was more of a developer. And that really got fun. You know, like I'm a, what do you call it? A critic? I love,
he's harsh on games.
yes, I love breaking things down and being like, that sucks. That doesn't work. This is horrible. That doesn't evoke the theme. Why would you do that? That's the worst way to possibly do that.
Well, I'm just saying,
And so development kind of was a natural kind of expression of that tendency to be like, well, why don't you just do it the right way? And Ryan has experienced this many times.
That's okay.
It's
I'll just
okay.
crush your idea. Tell you what you should have done.
You need important people that can be firm critics about things like that if you want to make sure it's done right. Otherwise,
it's like an editor. Like every writer needs a good editor.
Yeah,
you can't just have a bunch of developers who are yes men and be like, this is perfect. Like,
That's right.
it doesn't work.
I always use the
That's how you
record
get
producer
flops.
analogy. That's like the developers like your record producer. It's like, you're a good musician, but if you want it to be like marketable and tighter and all those things,
you
That's how
gotta
you
cut
make the
out that
album.
bridge, man. That bridge sucks.
Bridge did suck.
You gotta cut out that bridge, and cut the chorus in half. So when Ryan was like, "Hey man, let's make a game," it was his idea. He came up with the theme and the idea and like how it would work together. Where you've got like this Euro game as the engine with this tower defense. Like I'm actually using plastic bits with Toy Factor to like defend my castle combination. Like he came up with the whole idea. And then, we kind of worked on it together. But I really do feel, that my role in our partnership with that is more on the development side. Not that I don't come up with mechanics and cool stuff, but like mostly it's the world that he set up.
Yeah.
And then I just play in that sandbox regarding like coming up with new card ideas and that kind of stuff.
I really like that. I like that. Ryan, why don't you give us a little bit about your background now?
Yeah, so my background, it's definitely a lifelong gaming. I will say, so I probably started off with like when I was a really little kid playing little Hero Quest matches at friends' houses and stuff like that.
Love Hero Quest.
Oh yeah, and they're redoing it too, which is cool. But yeah, so that was kind of like the first taste of like minis and stuff. And then I really attribute my best friend in childhood, kind of my more like middle school best friend, my buddy Alex Cozen. He's the one who we made fast friends in school, and then he brought me home like to his house one day, and we started playing like Warhammer Fantasy. And so I became like a Skaven player, and then that obviously led into Warhammer 40K, and then I did like Space Marines, like everyone does it first, and then went boo to that. I'm an Orc player, which now is Tyranids and a little bit of Orcs. But yeah, so like, I credit him with kind of that real deep dive into like tabletop wargaming type stuff. And we did a lot of that throughout high school and all those other times. And then Magic has also been the whole time. I started Magic in middle school. I think I was like just at the tail end of Unlimited probably is when I got in. And there's been several big gaps. Like I'll take like 4 or 5 years off when I get deep into like a non-gaming hobby, but then I've always come back to it. And now it's been solidly like 15 years of playing or something like that. So that was a big kind of resurgence for me. I got back into Magic right at the tail end of college when I kind of took some break for some years. And then when I moved to Portland, that was away at Guardian Games, actually, in Portland is where I met a lot of my still current friends. So a lot of my best friends still playing Magic. And when EDH, which is now Commander, first started, that was like the big scene at Guardian back then. I think it was like Tuesday or Thursday night. And so that was kind of my gaming thing here. And then much like how I met Evan is how I met Hans, who was one of my co-owners along with his wife, Kat, in the Portland Game Store when we founded that. But Hans and I were working at a restaurant together, and we are working a double, which is, you work a morning and an evening shift, and they give you like an hour or two break in between for the law. And so Hans and I would go to like, we'd be like working in the Pearl in Portland here, and then we'd go to, we went to Rogue Brewing and would like, not let anyone know we were getting a drink in between our shifts, obviously, and then but we discovered we both play Magic, and then so Hans and I started playing like every week. We'd drink a bottle of wine and play Magic at my house, and that was like our little routine. It was like casual.
It's a bottle of wine each. Right?
Yeah, well, yes, sometimes for sure. But yeah, so Hans and I got into that, and that's kind of like, Hans was really the one who introduced me to modern board gaming. He turned me on to a lot of those, like, because I had played a little bit throughout here, but like really a lot more like miniature gaming than board gaming in the modern sense. And so, and then like Evan said, my story with him kind of started the same way. We were waiting tables together and found out we're both nerdy. And I've known Evan and Hans almost as long as I've been in Portland. Hans definitely since like that first, month being here, and Evan since I think like a year later or something we met. So, and I've been here almost 15 years. But so that basically just led into, we were gamers together. We played games all the time on the side as like a core hobby. And then, I was working as an audio engineer for years, and I was kind of getting to a point where I was really feeling like I was ready for a career change. And Hans, was a Friday night. I was working super late. I was frustrated because I had a client who like forced me to stay late, and I had to cancel a date because of it, like a first date with someone. And I was just like, man, I'm getting like really burnt at this moment. And Hans called me and he said, hey, so I have a proposition for you. Don't say no, but if you say no, everyone doesn't get to do it. It's like, okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, like out of nowhere, he's like, you want to open a game store with me? I had no idea he was searching for properties for years. I had no idea he'd been dreaming about this. I was never actually the gamer who'd always dreamed of a game store. Evan was that gamer. And I remember Evan and Matt playing games at my kitchen table talking about opening a game store before it happened. Like I was there for the inception of that. But anyway, so we ended up opening the Portland Game Store. I left my job as an audio engineer. And right before that happened, I think Evan and I's game design started about 8 months to a year prior to the game store opening on After the Empire. It was slightly before that. But as he told, it was accurate. Basically, I just had been playing, getting freshly into the new Euro game wave hitting America, and specifically Agricola. I had been playing with Hans. That was one of the few games in my collection that I really cherished at that point. And I was like, I love this worker placement mechanic, and just like there's no cool castle defense. Like I love siege stuff. Like I grew up playing with like Playmobil castles was like my favorite toy as a kid. And so I just had this idea for like some basic mechanics, and I knew what the general idea I wanted. And like Evan was just like, let's get to the table right now. Like I knew he had done Big Fish River, and I knew we like hang out well together. So and then it's actually been, I think now 7 years, I think, since that process started, roughly.
Yeah. 6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, we did about four and a half years of game design and development, and then Gray Fox approached us at a convention, approached Evan at a convention, and we sold it. And then they sat on it for about 2 years, and then the Kickstarter was September 2019. So there's the long way around, kind of where I got to where we're at now with all that.
That's pretty.
That's
pretty cool.
Did you ever think that you're going to be a game designer?
No, I didn't. My parents still laugh about it because I used to play a lot of video games when I was a kid, and they're like, "You're never gonna be able to make a career out of games." And it's like now I, in 2 different ways, made a career out of games, although it's still not my main career. But
I was gonna say,
dude,
I mean,
story of my life.
I mean, if I kept owning the game store, that was my job.
Yeah, no, that's
my
true.
full time.
That's true.
Yeah. And like that's what my job now is too. Is I'm basically the manager out at Reunion Board because I'm the full time employee. So it's usually myself and the store owner. And 6 or 7 years ago, a buddy of mine and I were kicking around the idea of opening a game store, and we just never really followed through it. And I worked at Guardian for about 2 months, years and years ago, and now that I work at Reunion Board, I've been there for 3 years now, and I'm like, man, I'm really glad I don't own my own game store. I don't need that headache. I'd rather just be the full-time employee and be able to go home and go to sleep at night.
You
To
go
an
home,
extent,
you get a paycheck that hopefully clears when you cash the check.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to do the employee.
Well, to the same extent, that's kind of the same narrative of Evan and I were we had gotten a bunch of art for After the Empire. We were going to Kickstart it ourselves. We were prepping for the launch.
Yeah.
And we were not looking to pitch it to developer. We hadn't even thought of that. We were just like, you Kickstart a game as a new, we didn't know how design to publishing worked really.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't. And so Evan was at a convention, trying to get people to Kickstart it. We were trying to stir up some buzz. So
we were just hitting conventions for a year or two.
Yeah, we were just showing it to people. Please Kickstart this. And then
play testing and make changes.
And Evan was the one who did all the research on how hard it is to get China to make molds for you, and he was not happy.
Fulfillment, distribution, missing components, warehousing, shipping, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Fabrication. It was
yeah, it's way nicer. Games. Yeah, it's way nicer to just sell your design, make less money, but then also kind of not owning the game store, you just do the fun part.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you shared that detail. I don't think I was aware of that fact. That so it's Gray Fox. Is that who has it?
Gray Fox Games.
Gray Fox Games. So tell us about your relationship with them.
Just a quick aside, Ryan. I was chatting with someone last night, an unnamed someone who had tried to become the publisher for After the Empire without us realizing it.
What? I did not.
It was when you think that somebody knows that you hit on them, but they didn't pick up on it because you weren't explicit enough. It was one of those moments where he was like, "Yeah, we wanted to publish your game."
Wow.
I had no idea. Tell me that story later, though. I'm curious.
I will.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Our relationship with Gray Fox, anyways, Evan was there for the foundation of it because that year I was running a game store, honestly, and After the Empire would have died without Evan, largely because of the fact that, owning a game store while also at the time I was getting a master's degree was not really a lot of free time. And he was the one who kept the ball alive.
Really?
It wouldn't have existed without Ryan.
No free time?
It wouldn't have finished without me.
Correct.
Nice.
But yeah, and I think that's probably true of most of our projects seemingly going forward as well. Yeah. But anyways, I was not at this convention. I had been to, I think, all the other conventions that year, but Evan went to the other. This was Geek Way to the West in St. Louis or near?
I think it's in St. Louis.
Okay.
Or maybe it's right.
It's near that. Yeah. Because Gray Fox is St. Louis based. So that's why that's their home convention.
Yeah.
And so they were there. And they walked by the owner, Shane, right? Walked by the tables as you said it. Or should you pick up this thread since you were there for this part?
Yeah, why don't you pick up from here? Your version.
Okay, well, I'll go as you've told me and correct me if I'm wrong then. But basically, Shane walked by the table, saw the shiny table factor because we'd already 3D printed walls and all the fanciness we were trying to build hype.
We had commissioned almost all the art already.
Yeah.
So, it was looking decent. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he walked by and what was that? And then he got his developer, Josh, and they both came back, played with Evan. Then Evan said, "Hey, this is suddenly this company wants to buy it." And I know them because Champions of Midgard is their big title. and I had played that. I owned that. Like I was, and so I don't think Evan knew them as well as I did as a company.
No, yeah. I had heard of Champions of Midgard, but
yeah, but I was like really stoked because Evan's like, out of nowhere we have this opportunity, and so then it turned into like basically it was a Skype call with like them before they played, and he's like, would you be interested in this? And then a Skype call after, when like Shane actually the owner of Grey Fox didn't actually like his experience that much because our game can be swingy, less so after development. And, like, it's like if someone is not at all paying attention, they can just get sacked over and over and it can feel bad. Yeah. We've softened that. But then Evan also is and continues to be the best player in the world at After the Empire. And he has no turn down button on playing well. So he like crushed the Grey Fox owner like horribly. And he got sacked a bunch, which like if you don't have that Grey Fox mentality, or if you don't have that like Galaxy Trucker watch yourself fail mentality, you don't necessarily always feel good getting sacked. So
yeah. So first I played with Josh, the lead developer at Grey Fox, and we had a great time. It was awesome. It was a great experience. And then I played with Shane, who didn't fare as well, and I never go easy on anyone. So if you ever beat me in a game, you know that it's legit. Like you really beat me because I wasn't going easy on you.
Oh yeah.
Which some people appreciate, but anyway, it was not a great experience for Shane. But nonetheless, Josh was able to convince him, yes, this is a good game. You did have a bad experience. Yes, we need to work on some development so that experience doesn't happen to too many people very often.
Yeah.
But it's a really good game and we should do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the game now.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us the pitch? So what made Shane and Josh love the game so much?
Are you doing the pitch, Evan?
No, it's you. I was trying to point.
Oh, that was pointing up at me in the Foursquare. Gotcha.
I don't know if we're in the same square. Yeah.
Usually I'm the default pitcher. So
awesome.
So basically, I'll just give the overview for people who don't know anything about it. So
yes,
After the Empire, it is a castle defense game. The main mechanic driving it is a worker placement game, which people would know about if they've played Agricola, Lords of Waterdeep, Stone Age. Those are all some classic examples of what a worker placement game is. I don't know if you're mostly miniature listeners or not, but hopefully that people knows what that is.
Yeah.
So that's the core engine of the whole game is this worker placement. You all take alternating actions to do your stuff. And then at the end of that whole actions phase, everybody experiences an attack. And so the theme of the game is essentially this is after the fall of the Roman Empire. It's roughly historically accurate. And the whole idea is you're these kind of disparate feudal lords that are left in the remnants of a big empire that has collapsed, insinuating Rome or whatever, Okay. And so you're all kind of trying to be the best lord, but then essentially the invading horde has come, burning through the lands. And rather than banding together to actually defend against it, you're all holding up in your castle and hoping everyone else is going to die, and you'll survive the storm essentially.
Yeah.
And so after you do your worker placement, you defend your castle, and people often refer to it as tower defense, which I think is actually kind of an accurate description now. But in the development of it, we didn't set out to say, let's make a tower defense game. We just set out for like, what's the combat mechanic going to look like? Yeah. And it feels very tower defense-y, except usually tower defense has like a winding path with towers and stuff. Right. Ours is just a four-sided castle, and you're just being attacked on those sides.
Well, we always had a physical castle you were defending. So that was always a thing.
Yeah, we always wanted to have that. And that toy factor was huge. Like I love building a castle,
Yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the pictures and like a couple of videos of gameplay, and I'm like, I could get into this deep.
Oh yeah. And for me, Stronghold's always been one of my favorite video game series. And so we definitely mined heavily from that, because that's also pretty historically accurate as far as how they like have the gong farmer and all those things. But yeah, so after basically that is the core of the game. And then one of the more unique mechanics is instead of having a pile of gold as your gold, and gold is victory points, we have a gold track, but that is also tied to your invader strength. Mm-hmm. So any card that comes up has 3 different gold levels on it. So the richer you are, basically the more points you have in the game, the harder the attack is. So the key is not like most games where you're just gain victory points as fast and aggressively as you can. It's gain victory points that you can actually hold on to, because if you get sacked, you lose a bunch of victory points.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the core tension of it.
It kind of ends up with a bit of a Dominion tension, where like, toward somewhere you have to really start leaning into getting the victory points, but you have to make sure you don't do it. Anyway, you have to make sure that you can support the amount of gold that you've got,
Yeah.
and you can weather.
You don't
the
want to
attack.
get it. Yeah, you don't want to get too many points too quickly, and then get an attack that you can't withstand, and then just
exactly.
get sacked right away. Or
You've got to build up your foundation and your defenses, and get all your little troops and your little towers in place to weather whatever storm is coming.
And the way in which it's mostly a Euro game as those categories exist, but the way in which it's not, and this is definitely Evan and I's personality, and also hopefully players like this too, is that the attacks at the end of the game, there's going to be 5 cards that you don't know about, right? So we got the 4, it's 4 invaders, and then we have the siege card as well. Those are all square cards. They're all coming from a randomized direction. You know about 1 card only. So 1 card, you know what it's going to be, where it's coming from. Okay. And as the turns go on, more cards reveal. It maxes out at that total number. But you don't know exactly what direction it's coming from. You don't know how hard it's going to be for sure. And so that element of randomness to us is the excitement. And for a lot of people, they like that too. If you're like a real hardcore, must know everything, perfect min-max Euro player, that could be the sticking point for you.
Yeah. We do have mitigating factors in there. Like you can plan ahead. You can get these cards that help minimize the effects of the randomness. And you can get these tokens that help you optimize your placement and really minimize those random outcomes. But at the same time, randomness is part and parcel to the game. Yeah. So if you just hate it and don't want any randomness in your game, and you want to know exactly, like map out like a solvable perfect game and know that you can do that from round 1 to round 7, like this is not that game.
Yeah. But yeah, is that a good overview for you on what's going on with the game?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm glad that you shared that. So I'm going to use like simple terms here. So each player is sort of building up their own dominion as they see fit.
Yes.
And each player, because it's a 2 to 4 player game, right?
Yeah.
And so each player is not explicitly their enemy. Like you don't actually attack the other players.
Correct.
Right. But when the invaders come, is everyone affected by the same invaders or the same quantity and quality of invader, or is it like you get this kind of invader and you get this kind of invader? Like how do the invaders come?
Well, the cards hopefully you guys are seeing us in the same order too. The cards affect everyone the same in the sense that you have the same threats coming your way.
Okay.
But those threats change based on how much money you have and how enticing you are to those invaders. So the same card, exactly. The same card is attacking me and Ryan. But if I've got 20 gold and he's got 8 gold, there's like 3 invaders that see his castle and go, maybe worth it. And there's like 11 invaders that see my castle and go, yeah, we want those spoils. So we're still affected similarly, but it is scalar based on how much gold you have.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things I was looking at when I was just kind of, doing my preliminary research, I wanted to ask about in the beginning stages when you're doing the worker placement, what are the kinds of actions that you can do? Like, what are the kinds of things that your workers can do?
Yeah. So basic actions you can do. We have kind of our basic core resources. There's a wood mill where you can go get the wood. There's a quarry where you can get stone, and there's a mine where you can get iron. And those are the 3 core resources of like building resources. Other than that, it's food and gold are the other resources. And so your castle inherently is producing food, but there's also ways to get that by like taxing. We have a merchant location where you can convert your gold into mixed resources or your resources back into gold. We also have, and so this part we haven't really brought up, there is a card tableau building engine that drives most of the really uniqueness of player strategy. And so there's 2 locations. There's refugees that are fleeing from the horde. And so you try to entice those useful, skilled refugees to join your cause by, offering them food and gold. And so that's a card type you have. And we also have buildings. So there's like a building area too. So there's 2 different areas you can go to for cards, either the refugee spot or the building spot. And then you pay the cost of resource on the card. So that way you build up tableau and special abilities and unique worker placement spots just for you. And then there's also a mercenary camp where you can go to get like mercenaries that just help you out for a turn. Or it's kind of a way you can pay gold to get extra troops. And troops stick around the whole game, whereas mercenaries are just like you help you out for one fight sort of thing. And then we also have a location for scouting. And that's kind of what Evan was talking about with the risk mitigation, the randomness mitigation, is it lets you basically wait to put your troops on the walls in the perfect position until after you see all the cards. Whereas normally you have to put your troops out before you see all the cards. And that scout location also provides you additional secret objectives, and so you can get more secret objectives to score at the end of the game. And so I think that's all. And then there's some worker placements on your own board, with like one called the stockpile, where you actually go to build the castle pieces. There's like a granary where you can fix your farms. There's and then we have stuff like that, and place to heal your troops.
So there's a whole farming element that we haven't really discussed. It's on your player board. You have these farms, and the invaders raise your farms, and then you can't produce food from those fields. And a la classic Euro style, like Agricola Origins, you have to feed your people. So so we started very grindy in After the Empire, like very, very grindy. But we've got it to a place now where it's like a thing that just makes sense and it works, and it's a cool tension rather than like being horribly oppressive.
Because we were trying to be accurate to sieges at first, which food is horribly oppressive, but turns out not very fun to do it that way.
So there's this whole other, like, you have to feed your troops. So the larger your army is to defend the castle, the more food that you have to provide to maintain that army. Which just kind of is an extra tension to throw into like how much gold can you maintain and how big of an assault can you maintain while still being able to feed the troops that are defending the castle. And of course, all the cards interact with that farming aspect as well. Not all the cards. That's one of the strategies, is being good at farming too.
Yeah.
So when you start out,
you don't want to lose all your farms and have to turn all your cavalry horses into meat pies to feed your troops.
We do have a demon barber. He's a bit of a Sweeney Todd nod, and he does turn troops into meat pies for you.
Nice. Demon barber.
Yes. We do have meat pies in the game.
Yeah.
So when you start out, do you start out with a whole castle, or do you have to build each
It's
wall?
like a wooden palisade, like a 4-walled wooden castle.
Yeah.
Looks very much like a wooden fort, basically.
Okay, and you get that, and you get all 4 walls.
Yes.
Correct.
At the beginning of the game. Okay.
Yeah, and 2 troops, but you don't have any towers and turrets. You don't have any stone, anything.
Right.
Yep.
It's a beautiful game. There's a lot of fun tokens, and blocks. One of the things I'm a big fan of is the catapult meeple.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't
It's
think
one
I've
of our
seen-
trackers, yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't seen one of those before. So
Well, if I can address real briefly, I don't know if this was going to come up since you have mini war gamers as the core audience for your podcast here. We do have a lot of miniatures in the Kickstarter edition only. In the base game, it's going to be cubes and tokens, but Grey Fox has multiple times stated that they intend to release all this stuff as a feature down the line thing that you can add on and buy from them direct. Like they didn't call any of their Kickstarter exclusives Kickstarter exclusive. They were Grey Fox exclusive. So Grey Fox reserves the right to reprint those in the future.
awesome.
So if they want to go out and buy the retail copy because they're interested in the gameplay and the cool castle pieces, because the castle pieces are still the same 3D cool plastic in both, they should be able to buy those minis down the line. And now I will also say these are not wargaming size minis because they have to fit on the castle walls. So think of the size of a classic board game cube. That's about their footprint. And then they're about the size of a joint, of a finger joint. Yeah, they're tiny little guys. Yeah.
They're 8mm bases, and then I think they're about 12 millimeters high.
Yeah, and that's just because they had to be able to fit within our world here. Now, they do look really cool when they're all out. They look really cool. It will be a challenge for your painters, but I'm excited to see what they look like when they're done. Yeah.
I got to tell you, there are war games in that scale. So
I remember Epic 40K, man.
Use them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss
Yeah,
Epic 40K.
you could totally, take a square and just like glue these dudes onto a square for army formations and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Magnets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably even better.
Man, magnetize inside your castle. That's
I'm old
sexy.
school.
They're hollow. We could totally put magnets inside those and then
That would
magnetize the
be
bases. That's really cool, actually.
So awesome.
I might do that.
Yeah.
That'll be
I
the
put you in charge of that.
That's gonna require so many neodymium magnets for like what is it? 8 castle walls
Yeah.
per player times 4.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Plus, like
gosh.
8 troops can fit on the wall. I've got
Yeah.
these meat hooks. I can't get in there. That's
Yeah.
on you.
Yeah, fair.
So the game's out now.
Yes.
Yes.
The Kickstarter took place 2 years ago, something like
Year
that.
and a half or so, yeah.
Year and a half.
September
Okay.
2019 was the conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay. So where can people buy it?
Right now, you can pre-order it direct from Gray Fox, and I know at least one person has said they've already received their pre-order retail copy from Gray Fox, so they are already
Wow.
shipping those. Game stores that backed it, I think there was like 26 game stores that actually backed it, and one of them was the Portland Game Store, who had it and already sold out. I don't know about Gray. I think that Red Castle also, I assume, backed it, but I don't know for sure.
I think so too. I actually haven't checked in with Matthew in a minute. So they may or may not have already got them and already sold out of them. But it's
Yeah.
worth giving them a call to find out.
Totally. Beyond that, though, Gray Fox Direct is one way, and then I definitely know it's hitting distribution. Like I've already seen the web pages, from just talking to the guy about the game store for me, that like I can see it's in distribution channel pre-order right now.
Right.
And I know that's Gray Fox's plan. I don't. They've never let slip yet what the timeline on distribution retail is. I do know that it will be distributed. All the major distributors seem to be carrying it, and it is direct available from Gray Fox now,
So if you want to support your friendly local game store,
which you
I
should.
do recommend going into them or calling them and saying, hey, I want to buy this game. I want to buy it through you so that you stick around. I would rather avoid buying it, from some discount online place because I want this community space to exist.
Yeah.
So if you tell the store owners that you want this game, then they are more likely to actually stock that game.
Yeah, and I will tell you as a previous game store owner that like if I have 3 or 4 pre-orders that are already like pre-sold, that tells me there's an interest in the game, and I'm more likely to stock more copies in addition to that. So
Yeah. Well, that's an ethos that we try to espouse here at this podcast.
Yeah.
You
I'll
know,
talk
me
to
per-
Nick about it for you tomorrow, Jeremiah.
Thank you. Well, I was just going to say, I stopped buying from online a long time ago. And when I have play money, I want it to go to the local place that I'm most likely going to play the game at.
Yeah.
And and I'm happy that it seems like most of the game stores in our area are still in business and are be okay.
It's a rough time.
It is a rough time, and
Yeah.
so I want them to succeed. And so we talked about a lot of that in our podcast about ordering directly through our local store. So
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
And being a game store employee, I always encourage people to shop their local store. Like as a player, I also understand like trying to save a little bit of money, but it's like those other big retailers that are online, like they don't need your money as much as like your local stores, especially during times like these. Like I heavily encourage anyone to like, if you can get it from a local store, please get it from a local store because when we can start going to stores again and events and things like that, that's where you're going to be going. Like you can't go to an Amazon distribution center and set up a board game in the middle like of of their warehouse, but you can go to your local game stores like PGS or Guardian or Red Castle or Guardian or not Guardian, Runin Board, and you can play at those places. And I always encourage people to try to buy from your local stores when you can.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah, we're all about that, and I wish we're at non-COVID times. I would love to have done a proper like meet and greet release at these 2 stores, and hopefully we can do that after the fact. But who knows when that will be, and if that will still be relevant.
Yeah.
I
have before we part ways, I've got a few more questions for you. I'm looking at a picture here. There's a card here called Red Castle Inn. Is that an Easter egg?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So our game definitely there is, if you look for it, there are some Easter eggs and there are some tongue-in-cheek things. Some of them are more obvious, like the Demon Barber. Some of them are less obvious. But it's definitely in there, and it definitely represents our kind of sense of humor. And
Yeah,
I
we
love it.
both kind of have the ethos that like games, like while they can be taken seriously, it can still be funny and not ruin
Yeah.
the serious tone
Yeah.
of a game. You know, like one of the promos that
Yeah.
we were very thankful survived is the Quarry dude, because when we were developing it, we couldn't figure out what the name of a dude is who like is he a quarrier? Is he is it like a so we're like, yeah, it's a quarry dude, and the name stuck. And
Yeah, we
so
just
there
called
is a
him-
quarry dude.
Yeah, his name was Quarry Dude for like 4 years.
Yeah,
Nice.
Oh
He
man.
wasn't a stonecutter. He was a Quarry Dude.
yeah.
Nice.
So
So-
he's a Kickstarter promo. And
Yeah.
thankfully, they let the Gray Fox. The people who work at Gray Fox are very fun individuals as well,
That's
and
cool.
so they were willing to humor us to a limited extent on those things.
Oh, we stood our ground
Yeah.
on that.
We stood the ground on Corey,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah,
This has to be in
Well,
the
I-
game.
Yeah, that's cool.
I was watching the like 2-minute teaser that's on the Kickstarter page, and it was showing like a couple of different cards, and I noticed the farmhand. The farmhand is like this shirtless, chiseled, sweaty dude.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
We very
That's-
specifically
That's such like
requested that artwork.
such a-
That was like
Yes.
we paid for that artwork in that form
Yes.
exactly.
It's such a
Yeah.
funny like trope. This totally
That's, I think that was-
chiseled farmhand like.
I think that was Ted Ottison, or maybe it was Bacon Strap, but I think Ted Ottison. There was a couple of Swedish artists that I commissioned, and we basically said cover of steamy novel, romance novel.
Yeah, it's
like
nice.
this is
very
the cover of
much
a romance novel. And the guy,
It is the-
the artist was like, "Cool," and he delivered. It's
It was
awesome.
all because it started with Evan had like used like terrible stock art in the original prototype, and he grabbed just looked like Fabio or something for the farmhand and put flavor text about like there being much weeping when he was taken from his village. And
Yeah,
it was like it just stuck.
he was the only available bachelor left.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So what's next for you two? Are you going to create another game?
We have created already many more games and are in the
Yep.
process of it. In fact, we're meeting tonight to work on more
Yep.
After the Empire and
Oh,
that.
okay.
Nice.
Yeah, Evan has
Very cool.
his own game going right now, that a druid-based game that you could talk more about, Evan. But so he has that going on. He has another game he's developing with actually several games with some other people. Him and I have like 5 to 7 active games in the hopper right now
Yeah.
that are being
Nice.
worked on. One of which has a gentleman's agreement with a company that has yet to actually contractually sign it. So we
Yeah.
don't know if that's going to happen or not. But
Yeah, COVID has thrown a lot of wrenches.
Yeah.
in the works.
Sure has.
I mean,
But yeah.
in the game industry plus every industry. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely still working. The last year killed my creative juices for about a year solid. I kind of just took a breather because like it was hard for me to be creative with the state of the world at that time.
Yeah.
But I think as
Yeah.
we've all adapted, I've come out the other side of that and I'm feeling very creative right now. So
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
So how do we follow you? What's the best way of doing that?
Okay, I guess that's me. Yeah, so Evan is pretty active doing posts on our web page, which is mostly moderated by him. So that's portlandgamecraft.com.
Okay.
We have a Portland Gamecraft Facebook page. We also have, for specifically After the Empire, you can go to Gray Fox's Facebook page, or After the Empire has its own standalone Facebook page. We post a decent amount on Instagram, but we're not super heavy on the social media. We are active as individuals, but as company, we don't really we're not
Yeah.
super crazy, but we have those sources, and if something big is happening, we will certainly be saying it in those places.
yeah, we have an email list, and I think we've sent
One,
one.
you got to be
in
careful
here.
with email lists. You don't want to make people unsubscribe.
That's,
So
that's probably underdoing it.
yeah, probably
Yeah, you
underdoing.
could probably send another one.
But
One
yeah,
every 3 years is probably reasonable.
yeah. So that's the best ways to get a hold of us. If you post a question, the Board Game Geek forum, or on a Facebook page that we're a part of, we will see it and we will respond to it. So
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I found your portlandgamecraft.com, and right there on the landing page, there's a place to sign up. So
Yeah.
This was great. I'm excited. I was a little disheartened when I discovered that the minis were Kickstarter inclusive. Exclusive, that means I missed out on that.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
but hopefully, maybe I can pester Gray Fox to reprint them.
Or nab the last copy at Red Castle if they still got them, because those will be Kickstarter copies.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, because any store that has it right now, they were Kickstarter backers. So
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, which I don't know if they have any. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this was great. Chad, any closing thoughts? Any ideas?
No, I actually had hadn't heard about it until like right before we started doing this, and so I was like doing a little quick research. But it was fascinating to hear about your guys' process and everything, and that's always something that I feel like that's one of the couple of things that a lot of people that are involved in games and stuff like that. It's like one of those up in the clouds dreams that people always have is like, I either want to work in a game store or own a game store or make my own games. And it's really cool to see that there are people in our local area that have nailed all three of those things and are still continuing to do it. So
I would recommend partnering with Evan if you want to do those things. He's pretty good at getting you over the finish line.
I'm all about follow through.
I'm kind of like Evan is like, I'm a little bit better at refining things or tweaking things. I'm not as much of an idea man as other people. It was the same thing in my film career too. When I was going to film schools, I was always a better editor than I was an actual idea person. So I just need to find my Ryan apparently that just throw ideas at a board. So but that's awesome, guys.
And Evan, if you ever need someone to hype your game at a con, that's my role.
Or playtest. Or playtest.
I am horrible at hype. So
I'm all about the hype. So,
am I going to have a game? You might like it. I don't know. Whatever.
Everyone knows that I'm all about the hype. So
and Jeremiah's personal goal is to play all of the games. So
all the games. That's my personal goal.
He's always down to try something new.
Well, we're happy to play with you guys. And if you ever want to, even if we can't get it physical together or get you a physical copy, there's a fully scripted tabletop simulator mod that's official by Gray Fox. And we are always happy to get on board and play a game with y'all some night. So,
I'm going to take you up on that probably.
Definitely.
I would like that. So, hey, I want to thank you for being a part of this show today. And I want to thank all of our listeners for listening today. I'm going to have some links in the show notes specifically for portlandgamecraft.com, and then of course links for how to find us at Spellstorm Miniatures at Discord and Facebook and all the places. Take care.
Great. Thanks guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.